Me and my partner were like 2 shots of whiskey. We're getting ready for episode 11 with Barry Corbin. Howdy, boys. You heard of Barry Corbin from Lonesome Dove?
Who the hell's that?
Quickly, please.
Rye, or what'll it be, old timer?
Rye will do as long as it gets here quickly. We got an episode coming up.
Darn cowboys ought to broom yourselves off before you walk in here.
You listen to him.
Get all the sand we need without the customers bringing it in. That'll be $1.
Here's a nickel. I said I've got episode 11 with Barry Corbin. And I need some respect. I'm the Converse Cowboy. Now turn around and look at me and my crew. We ain't playing with you. We don't put up with people like you, especially when we got Barry Corbin coming on. Get out, boys!
Watch it there.
Now, can I have another glass, please?
You just broke my nose, you old son of a...
I told you! We've got episode 11 with Barry Corbin coming up. How about a shot, partner? Here's to Barry Corbin in episode 11. Cheers.
Roscoe, what in God's name are you doing in Texas?
Well, I'm looking for July. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to read a chapter out of Lonesome Dove for the Texas Monthly.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, I mean, Barry Corbin, Lonesome Dove, No Country for Old Men, Urban Cowboy. You've done a number of things, and what seems to be your passion. You blend the world of, cowboy and actor very well. I really enjoy doing the background and the research on you, Barry. You started from an early age in the, in theater. And tell me if I'm wrong with any of this stuff, but it seemed like you started.
No, I was about 38 when I did my first movie. So I told up until then I did theater.
Yeah, really. So
yeah,
Urban Cowboy, Uncle Bob, you were 38 when you got that role.
That's right. Yeah, I turned 39 just after we finished shooting it.
And you started at what, the age of 7? You got into theater?
Yeah, well, I actually started seriously when I was in, I guess, in high school.
Okay.
I decided that's what I wanted to do when I was about 7.
Yeah. And that's fascinating to me. Somebody from West Texas growing up in the cowboy world and that culture to go down the theater path, and to take it as far as you did is nothing less than extraordinary. But I'm curious to dive into some of the hurdles and challenges you may have had to overcome. Especially West Texas is known for football and sports and things like that. How was that?
I'm probably the only guy that's from Lubbock who studied ballet and worked on an oil rig at the same time.
Tell me about that experience.
Well, there was an oil man in Texas, and I forget his name, but he had a daughter who wanted to study ballet, and he didn't want to send her up there with the heathens in New York, so he went and studied around and interviewed people in Europe, and he found the Lithuanian ballet master, Eugene Banzavicius, and he set him up in a ballet school in Lubbock so his daughter could study ballet. And so a lot of girls were there, and there was a few boys, but none of them strong enough to lift the girls. And so they let me study for free. I'd come in there and study. I did some recitals. I played the Prince in Swan Lake and some various other things.
You did a number of Shakespeare stuff too, right?
Yeah, I did a lot of Shakespeare early. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'll do a little for you in a little bit if you want me
I'd
to.
love it. I'd love it. You bet.
Right.
You bet.
Let's get some of this other stuff out of the way first, though.
Yeah, you bet. We'll kind of warm up a little bit into the Shakespeare stuff.
Yeah.
So you grew up, I mean, West Texas, you grew up around horses. You have a passion for horses.
Yeah. Well, my granddad had some horses, and I spent some time on his farm, and and I kind of knew how to ride. I just kind of, they put me on a horse and I started riding.
Yes, sir.
And I really didn't learn how to ride until I started getting into cutting horses, and I had to forget all I'd learned, all I'd figured out, and go back to the beginning and learn how to really ride.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That was I guess I was in my mid 40s when I did that, when I started doing that.
So what got you into cutting, though?
Well, they have these celebrity rodeos, and my shoulders I got busted rotator cuff, so I couldn't rope. And I mean, I could rope, but it wasn't very pretty, and about half the time I wouldn't catch, so there's no point in trying. And so I decided I'd try cutting horses, and I'd seen it done, but I'd never done it, and I got started in it, and before you knew it, I owned about 3 of them, and
yeah,
there I go.
Yeah, as with most, I guess, horse-related events, it can be somewhat addicting. But cutting's interesting, because hell, you can do that on into your 70s, 80s, as long as Gary Belenfant just won the Futurity last year.
The last time I got on a cutting horse was about a month and a half ago.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now I watched an interview you did, and you said the only way you're getting on a horse nowadays is if they pay you.
Well, that was then. Now I'm kind of thinking about my birthday comes up in October, and
yes,
they have the celebrity cutting for the National Cutting Horse Association in November. And I'll be 80 years old, and I figured I'll go in there and beat them 30-year-olds.
Yeah, you damn right. I like your attitude. Is that something you do every year? You go to that celebrity cutting every year?
No, I haven't done it in several years. I used to do it every year.
Yeah.
They quit. Well, I kind of got busy and didn't do it for 2 or 3 years in a row, and now they think I'm retired. Yeah. I'm gonna have to go call them up and tell them I'll do it this year.
Yeah, you bet. You gonna bring one of your own ponies? Do you typically ride something?
No, I don't have any more. I'll have to ride somebody else's.
Yeah, I got you. So tell me that. I'm curious to know. I'm a horse guy myself, and what were you showing? What kind of horses did you have? What bloodlines were you showing?
My main one was there was one of them was Red Quill 6 out of Quilchena, down Dick's Turnbow's horses, and I had one of them for a while. But my main one that I had from the time he was 5 until he died was a horse named Smitty the Kid. His sire was Skeeto, a Texas horse, and out of my Shady Chick, which was a horse out in California, reining horse. Yeah, and he was dock bar on the top, and so his breeding went back pretty good.
I got you.
He was a pretty good pony, but he's built like a tank, so he didn't have these catty moves these little horses have nowadays.
I know what you mean. Who are some of the guys that kind of took you under the wing, or maybe mentored you along with the cutting? It's a very meticulous sport. It's almost like a chess game in a way, and very detail oriented. Who are some of the guys that helped you out?
Rick Mallory was one of them.
Yeah.
Rick Mowry. I worked a little bit. I partnered up with Buster Welch in one cutting, and we won the thing.
Not a bad guy to be partnered up with.
He was a good one. Yeah, he's still a good one. He likes to get horseback still. He's had a couple of strokes, but he's got to have a little help getting up. But once he gets up, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So, I read a quote, or I heard a quote that you said, man, it resonated with me. You said, when you talk about the acting career and how tough it is for those guys, and really, I guess it applies to anything that people are doing at a top, at an elite level. Your quote said, "You've got to be an infant on the inside, but you've got to have the hide of a rhinoceros."
You betcha, and you got to be able to take rejection. In most lines of work, you go out and get you a job, and you might change jobs 2 or 3 times during a career, and you might be rejected 8 or 10 times for your work. But you look at my business and just starting out, you're rejected 8 or 10 times a day. Now, you start out thinking, well, I'm just not what they were looking for. It's not personal. But after a while, you realize that it's you they're rejecting. It's as personal as it can get. So you got no excuse. You gotta just say, okay, I'll roll with it. Or you got to go get a job in the bank and work in community theater. Yeah. That's if you work in community theater, you can really act. If you're in it as a business, you spend most of your time looking for work. Right. I thought that was interesting, talking about that and the rejection and people telling you that you had to maybe go to school, get an education to have a fallback plan. And, yeah. And well, I'll let you continue on with that, but. Well, I had a fallback plan. My fallback was that if I didn't make it as an actor, I could always drive a truck or dig ditches. Yeah. So, and I preferred to be an actor. So, if I had something to fall back on that was viable, then I'd fall back on it. So essentially, you burned the boats in a way. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I burned all the bridges. I just said, okay, here we go. Let's dive in. That's the way I live my life. I mean, tomorrow I don't know what's going to happen, but just dive in. I think that's it. My last name is Old French for raven, and our family crest has a raven, and underneath it says "God feeds the raven." So that's. I figure I tell my kids, I say, don't worry about anything because it'll all come out in the end. Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I don't know how many people could do what you did, and to face the rejection time after time, year after year. But you stuck with it. And you said you got your first real, big gig. Your first movie was Urban Cowboy at the age of 38. How did you, so this show is all about mindset and performance, and I think it relates not only with what we do, but in life as well. Yeah. How were you able to overcome that stuff, Barry? Those rejections that kept coming and those challenges that you had to overcome. What were some of the steps you took? I've always been pretty optimistic in my life, and I guess I'm just too hard-headed to accept failure. I just keep banging my head against the wall till the wall gives. Yes, sir. So I guess that's what it was. I was tempted to give up a few times. I was tempted to go out and find a regular job, but then I sobered up. So persistence and determination. Yeah. Persistence and determination. That's half the battle. And then you got to be able to deliver the goods once you get a chance. Yeah.
I'm curious to know about that part of it, Barry. What were your routines back then? You know, I know you spent about 14 years in New York. You spent some time in LA. You know, essentially, I got to think you were out of your comfort zone being in New York from West Texas.
Oh, I was very comfortable in New York. The New Yorkers weren't very comfortable with me, but I was real comfortable there. I liked it. It's a good place to be if you're young and broke. But if you're old and broke, it's the worst place in the world to be.
What makes you say that?
Well, nothing's convenient there. You don't go out and get in your car and go to the grocery store. You got to drag a little cart behind you and then walk up 4 flights to your apartment, dragging that cart with you. And after a while, you know, when you get up pretty old age, you can't do that anymore. So yeah. That's why I say that. If you're rich and old, it's okay, because then you got a chauffeur limousine and so forth. But if you're poor and old, it's not good.
I love it. So most of the people that I sit down with and that are doing what they do at an elite level have been doing it from a very young age. So I got to think you're no different, doing this from 7 years old. Do you think those year after year, the practice and, you know, doing the Shakespeare, doing the plays led to that day when you were 38 to you getting that role on Urban Cowboy?
Well, most people thought that they'd found me down in Houston working in a petrochemical plant, which I took as a compliment because, you know, if they thought that, then I did my job.
You did a damn good job. Yeah, that's right.
But it was, no, I'd had a long background in the theater by that time. So and I'll tell you what, there's nothing better for learning the basics and working in a dinner theater when people are slopping around with drinks and stuff. That's a pretty hard job there. Very
humbling, right?
Yeah, they're talking stuff. You know, they'll talk to you. I was doing a show one time. We had an audience full of psychiatric patients, and they were all talking to us. So it's interesting. Then I did a matinee of Julius Caesar one time for high school students. Well, they were making out up there in the audience. You could see them. And they were throwing paper airplanes made out of the program down to the audience. So I just made a job of it. I was doing my part, and I'd catch the paper airplane, wad it up, and throw it back at them.
That's talent. You can't teach that.
Yeah, one time, well, there's all kinds of stories about that. It was one time I saw a fella actually making love to a lady in the front row of the balcony. I looked up and it stunned me. I stopped right in the middle of a speech.
Oh shit, man! Most people got to pay money for that.
Yeah. I probably would have paid money for it.
Oh, that's great, man. I'm sure you could go on and on about stories that happen, and I think that's very cool, you know, just from putting your time in the trenches on those, you know, those sets and different plays you did.
Well, the people people don't know who you are. They you know, if they see you in a movie or on television, they figure you're another species, so they got to give you some kind of you know, some kind of credit of some sort. Although there are people who want to fight you because they say, yeah, you're a tough guy on the screen.
Yeah.
And you can usually talk them out of it, but you know, there've been a few times that you couldn't.
Tell me about one of those times you couldn't.
Well, I was at the American Shakespeare Festival in Stratford, Connecticut. And these guys come in, and Stratford is a funny place. They had this Shakespeare theater there that had been there for years, you know, and everybody, you know, a lot of famous people worked there and so forth. But there was a bar down the street that was frequented by people who worked in the helicopter factory. And they didn't like us, and we weren't too fond of them. I was walking down the street one time. I had long hair and a beard. Somebody threw a beer can at me, said, "Hey, hippie." And I thought I said, wait a minute, I'm not fat. I didn't know what that meant. You know, I was nearly 30 years old. I was too old to be a hippie. But I thought they accusing me of gaining weight. And then I was sitting in that bar, Ryan's bar. The guy come in and started pulling my hair behind my. And I said, "Hey, stop, knock that off, stop it." And he said, "What are you going to do about it?" I said, "Nothing, just leave me alone, stop it, go get away." And he kept doing it. So I got up and I threw him up on the shuffleboard table and grabbed the puck, held it over his head. I said, "You want me to break your nose, or are you going to stop it?" And he said, I guess I'll stop.
Yeah. You're a pretty big fella, though, right, Barry? I mean, for somebody to come up and start tugging on your hair.
Yeah, I was at that time about 190, I guess, 185, 190. You know, pretty good shape.
Yeah. A little liquid courage.
They all thought we were pushovers because they thought we all smoked marijuana.
Yeah.
And that just kind of makes you say, "Oh, groovy, man, I don't care. That's whatever." You know?
What year was that?
That is 1960, 68 or 69.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the height of all the flower children, I wasn't one of them. I looked like one of them, but I wasn't one of them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, man. So how long after Urban Cowboy did you land the role on Lonesome Dove?
Oh, that was probably 80. Must have been about 85, I guess. Lonesome Dove was. So we shot Urban Cowboy in 79. So it was whatever that, about 7 or 8 years.
Can you walk me through that process, Barry, on how that came about, and the process, the casting process, and just how you actually landed that role?
For Lonesome Dove?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Well, I read the book first, and I went in and talked to my agent. I said, "They're going to make a miniseries out of this book. I know they are, and I've got to be in it. I don't care what part I play, but you've got to get me in this thing." And it was a couple of years later they were casting it. My agent forgot about it. They forgot that I'd said anything. Unfortunately, what happened was they came into California seeing people. They were there for like 3 days. It was Simon Windsor, Bill Whitliff, and Suzanne DePass were seeing people. So that's the director and 2 of the producers. And Bill Whitliff also wrote the script. So they called and asked for me to come in and meet them to play Roscoe, which at the time I thought, well, I'd rather be on the cattle drive, but then I thought, well, no, this would probably be good to do Roscoe. So I went in and read for them, and they hired me to do it. And my agent was very surprised that they did, because they'd forgotten about it. So I got rid of them pretty quick.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
That was my next question.
they hired me to do Roscoe, and I went in and my stuff in Arkansas and early in Texas was shot it was the first shot. We came in April, I think. In April, and we shot all my stuff up to when Janie throws the rocks at the bad guy, and July saves me.
Now, was that filmed in Arkansas?
No, that was filmed right around Austin.
Austin, Texas.
And then they went to Del Rio, I think, where they filmed all the Lonesome Dove stuff. And I went away and did 3 other movies. So I did April. I worked for about 2.5 weeks, I guess, in April.
Mm-hmm.
Then went away and did 3 other movies. And then I came, and everybody was so optimistic and happy. They were just so thrilled to be doing this movie. Of course, they hadn't been on camera yet. They were all walking around wearing their new hats and stuff. And they're all happy.
Tell me this, but I want you to finish. But how many of those people were actually had ridden a horse or, kind of live the cowboy lifestyle?
Well, more or less, all of them had done some.
Yeah.
Bob Duvall is a horseman, and
Sure,
so is Tom Lee. And let's see, Tim Scott had done westerns. Danny Glover, I think, I think he had to kind of get used to it a little bit, but he did a good job.
Yeah.
But most of them were pretty good hands. Barry Tubb and some of them grew up doing it, but the other ones, it was a pretty handy group.
And you had to do the opposite, right?
Huh?
You had to do the opposite. You had to unlearn all the stuff that you had learned or knew about.
Riding around trying to get my range straight, doing all this. I couldn't do much of anything.
Yeah.
So I had to play like I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I had a good horse. I had old Hud. Hud was a great horse, big old plow horse. And we got along real well. But because he didn't want to do much of anything, and I couldn't, I just had to sit and walk around through the wood. But anyway, when I left, everybody was so happy. I left and I came back about 3 months later to do the part that we shot in New Mexico. And everybody was just as mad and sore as a boil. They wanted to fight each other. They were all mad. And I had a hamburger with Tim Scott, and I said, Tim, what had he played PI,
Oh yeah.
I said, Tim, what in the world happened? Everybody was so happy when I left, and now they're all mad and want to fight each other. What happened here? And he said 2 words. He said, cattle drive.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I had the best part in the movie. I had all the funny stuff to do, and then I got killed with the kids, and I never saw a cow the whole time I was there. So I had the good part.
What was the hardest part about that cattle drive, though? Were they having to constantly start and stop and reshoot stuff?
Oh yeah, if you're dealing with cattle, it's kind of it's almost an unwritten rule that it's irritating.
Yeah, you bet. But was it what you see in the movie, or was it just
cattle trying that? There was one thing they tried to do. They wanted to the studio said they almost scrubbed the whole thing because the cattle were too expensive, they said. And they had Bill Whitliff and some of them come in for a meeting in Hollywood. Said, do you think we could have them drive a herd of goats? And
Would have changed the
from
whole.
Lonesome Dove to Montana. And he said, well, they probably could, but you wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
So
would have
Bill
changed the whole
Whitliff went down
dynamic.
and bought a herd of Corianti cattle down in Mexico, brought them up, sent them on the drive, had them on the picture, and then he sold them for a profit at the end of it. So that was good.
That's great. Tell me about Roscoe Brown, Barry. Was this a character that you had in your head? Was this somebody that you knew? How did you come up with the character Roscoe Brown?
Oh, a composite of things. He's actually what Roscoe is. What I usually do is I read a script and see where, as a book, like I'd already read the novel, but I wanted to read it to see what it was. So I read the script. And then I read it again to see where my part fits in, if they can cut my part out, if it's not something to do with the plot, they can cut it out pretty easy. So the second time I read it for that. And then I start trying to break it down and analyze what my character's function is in the story. And Roscoe is basically the third child in the group. He's Joe's one kid, Jane is the other kid, and Roscoe is probably mentally younger than either one of them. He's a child, and that was what I was playing pretty much. I was playing an innocent child who happens to be 48, 50 years old.
Yeah. Hell of a job, though. I mean, that by far, I typically ask the question at some point on the show to anybody that comes on, what is your favorite Western movie? The answer is Lonesome Dove.
That's a lot of people that, there's a thing that you'll find if you go to any ranch house in the country, almost, you'll see a copy of the book Lonesome Dove, and you'll see either a videotape or a CD or DVD or what of the movie, of the miniseries. And you'll also see somewhere in there, if they read, you'll see in there Elmer Kelton's "The Time It Never Rained," because those two things are the most authentic, I think, that you're going to find anywhere. They've never made a movie of Elmer Kelton's book. I think it'd make a hell of a movie.
Think so?
Yeah, I think so.
I haven't read it, but I just wrote it down.
Well, you ought to read it. It's good. It's a good story. It's about the drought in the 50s in Central Texas.
I got you. Yeah, I think anybody that calls themselves a cowboy and has not seen the movie Lonesome Dove needs to just turn their cowboy hat in.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I knew, Waddy Mitchell, cowboy poet.
Yes, sir.
He was a cowboy up in Nevada, around in that area, and his sister sent him an album of songs by Chris Christopherson, and he just threw it in with his bedroll into the chuck wagon and broke the record. He didn't have a way to play a record out there on the range because they were out gathering cattle. And he didn't have a way to play it, so he just put it in there and the record broke. So he never heard the record. But inside the sleeves of the album had all the words to the songs. And he thought they were poems. And he read them and he started writing poetry based on Chris Christopherson's songs that he'd never heard.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And I don't know if Waddy's ever seen Lonesome Dove either. He may have. He's a real cowboy. what
Yeah.
he is.
What so you mentioned poetry. Is that something you're into? You read poetry today?
I not a whole lot, but I do read some. Yeah.
Who is your go-to? Who's your
Got-
top person you go to?
Well, I like a fellow by the name of Andy Wilkinson. He's from Lubbock, Texas, and he's written some very good poetry. He wrote he's got a concept album that he's got out, and I don't know where you can find it, but it's called Charlie Goodnight, A Life in Poetry and Song. And it's good. It's good. It tells the life of Charles Goodnight.
I got you. Now I know you went to Texas Tech, and you mentioned Lubbock. Joe Ely, musician. Joe Ely says,
Yeah, I know. You know.
Lubbock is a very romantic place if you just got out of prison.
That's right. I'll tell you, a lot of musicians came out of Lubbock, and I'll tell you why. Because there's nothing else to do. They'd sit on the porch and play music. That's what they did.
Yeah. I've heard stories of him talking about, writing songs. He'll just drive those roads out in Lubbock, just West Texas, and just drive. And I guess that's where some of his inspiration came from.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of his songs.
Yeah. I one time my mother gave me a guitar for my 14th, 15th birthday. And my granddad was her dad. He'd adopted her when she was an infant. She and her twin sister. And he was a grouchy kind of a fella. And very proper, prim, he saw he gave me a guitar. He said, biggest mistake you ever made, giving that boy a guitar. First thing you know, he'll learn to play it. Then he'll be playing it in the beer joints, bars. Before you know it, he'll start drinking. And directly he'll be on dope. You just ruined his life. Well, the fact of the matter is, I did everything but learn how to play the guitar. I could play 3 chords, but it took me a week to get from one to the other. So I never learned to play the guitar, but I did do all the rest of that stuff.
I was going to say, most people make a career out of those 3 chords.
Yeah, but they got that. My fingers don't work too good.
Oh, that's good stuff, man. Of course I'd seen No Country for Old Men, but whenever I was preparing for the show, I watched it again. I watched the clips you were in. Barry, that scene you were in with Tommy Lee, it's borderline a monologue that you did, man. That was impressive. And
yeah, it was a good deal. That was an interesting deal because what happened was the Coen brothers saw every old guy in the country, because all these old actors told me after I did it, said, you stole my part. They were all mad at me, all these old actors, because they'd gone in and met the Coen brothers on it.
Yeah.
And I guess they couldn't find exactly what they were looking for. And so they called my manager and asked if I would be interested in doing it. And I'd met him on other projects, but I'd never seen him for this one. And I said, well, send me the script. He said, well, it's only one scene, but it's a good scene, and it's with Tommy Lee Jones. And he knew Tommy, and I knew each other, known each other for 30 years, I guess. And I said, well, okay, let me read it. And I started reading it, and there's all this, blowing people's heads off with bolt guns and all kind of other stuff, and, bloodletting all over the place. Well, I don't know if I want to do this or not. And I kept reading. I said, well, where's Ellis? Character Ellis. because I read from the first on through, and I got to that scene, and I read that scene. I went back and read it again. And I called my manager and I said, well, hell yes, I'll do it. That scene is the movie. so I was lucky enough to do that.
So even if you're, even with just that one part, you read the entire script, start to finish, see if it's something you're interested in.
Yeah. If it's a movie like that, I do. Sometimes if it's a television show, I just read the scenes that I'm in.
I see.
You know?
Yeah. Man, that scene, man, I watched it over and over again, and it just got better and better each time. You can't stop what's
it's
coming.
Good. You remember those cats crawling around all over the place?
Yeah.
We had a couple of cat wranglers out there, a couple of women, and they released those cats in the place and just let them roam around. And there was rattlesnakes up under that shack out there.
No shit.
Yeah, you can stomp on the floor and get here rattling down under there.
Where was that at, Barry? Where was that filmed?
That was outside of Marfa, Texas.
Oh man, yeah, I've never been. I want to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, they I said, don't let them cats out of here because you'll never see them again. It's one of them gets out. Well, if you watched it again, when Tommy Lee comes in the front door, a cat runs out. That cat is gone. We never saw it again.
God dang, they were that bad, huh?
Yeah, they were tough. It was, but it was an interesting thing because Joel and Ethan Cohen would talk to each other. We'd do the scene and then they'd go. And then say, let's do it again. We'd do it maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times. And then they'd say, okay, let's move. We move. They never said anything to us. And we broke for lunch and Tommy Lee said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I don't know. They seem to, I guess they like it because they're not bothering us about anything. And he said, yeah, I don't know. And so we went through the whole day. They never said anything to us. They just talked to each other. And then sometimes they'd talk to the cameraman or somebody, but they never talked to us. And I just finished the show up in Kansas where I was horseback for 2 weeks. And that damn wheelchair made me sorer than the horse did. But, and the Coen brothers had to hire a plane to fly me from Dighton, Kansas into Marfa, Texas, which neither place has an airport. So I was on the plane with a pilot who was a big, heavy man. And I wanted to ask him if he'd had a physical recently, but I didn't do that. I did sit up in the co-pilot seat and ask him, I said, now, when you go to land this thing, what exactly do you do?
Just in case, right?
Sure that
just in case, right?
I just wanted to make sure, yeah. But anyhow, we got there all right, landed on the grass strip out there in Marfa. And the little Quonset hut was the airport. That was it. But anyhow, they talking back to what they were talking to each other. At the end of the second day, we went out and did about 3 or 4 little pickup shots, and then we were done. And I asked, I think it's Joel, I said, do you guys ever give anybody direction? And he said, well, if we cast it right, we don't have to. And I thought that was the smartest thing a director ever said to me. I had one director one time say to me, don't make that face. And I said, what? He said, that face you just made, don't make that face. I said, well, that's what you hired. You didn't hire me. This is the thing you hired. And he said, well, you made a face there that was unattractive. Don't make that face. I said, do you have any idea what the process is on this thing? I don't stand there and shave in the morning and figure out what face I'm going to make. I said, tell me to think something else. And he said, think something else. Okay, roll them. Action. And I did the same thing I'd done before, and he said, that was great. So, you know, I don't know. I a lot of times the director, if he's talking to me, if he's not playing, I don't know what the hell he's talking, but I just do the same thing again.
Yeah, right. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, you know, working with guys like Tommy Lee and Bob Duvall, those guys, you know, and I'm going to bring up Lonesome Dove again. You know, what's it like to work with guys like that? And I don't think you guys had any direct scenes together, you know, but No Country for Old Men you did with Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
Do you somewhat raise your talent level? Do you somewhat rise up to that expectation? You know, I played college baseball, and so whenever we would go play an LSU or an Auburn or somebody like that, we tend to rise to that occasion. You know, do you see that similarity
I think that,
with
you know,
acting?
You use whatever you get, you know, and with those guys, I never did work directly with Duvall. He's an actor who's got a particular way of working, but I've never worked with him, so I don't know how that would affect me. With Tommy Lee, we've known each other for a long time. We're not close, but we know each other pretty well. And so I know what to expect, and he knows what to expect from me. So it's sort of like you're working with a colleague, a friend, you know, but it's I don't know how it affects my performance. You know, it probably affects it some way because I'm working off of what I'm getting, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'm working off of somebody who I don't believe, and I'll sort of be doing this.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you gotta do what you get. I mean, you gotta work off of what you get.
No, I get it. Do you have a particular favorite where there was just synergy right out of the gate with another actor?
Hal Holbrook is he gives as good as he gets. I mean, he's really on top of everything. Of the Sean Penn, when he was first starting out, when he was real young, he was like dynamite, like firecrackers. You know, you'd rehearse something and he'd knock you out with it. And then in performance, he was all full out. So he was kind of an interesting fellow to work with. Sam Elliott's a good friend of mine, and I like working with him. We work well together.
What'd you work with Sam Elliott on?
Well, let's see. Murder in Texas, A Death in California, Travis McGee, Coniger, The Ranch.
Quite a few. Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, so we've known each other for I don't know, 35 years, nearly 40 years, I guess.
So
I like working with Tom Selleck. He's fun guy to work with.
Yeah, you bet.
And I don't know. There's a whole bunch of them that I like working with. There's very few I don't like working with.
I can see that. What about this, Barry? Has there ever been a part you went out for that you really wanted to get? You know, like the movie just really resonated with you, that you just had your heart set on, that didn't work out in your favor?
Oh, hundreds of times.
What was the one? What is the number one that stands out in your mind?
Oh, I can think of some that I just didn't go in for that turned out to be pretty good. But
what about one you went in for, you read for, and it just didn't happen?
Gosh, I can't think of one right off.
That means you got all the ones you wanted then, right?
Pretty much. I've been, my odds are pretty good.
Yeah, hell yeah.
There's a lot of people say, well, I missed that one. I missed that. Well, I forget about them after I don't get it. I forget about it after I go in for the audition. A lot of times they'll call me. I auditioned for something a month ago. I don't even remember it.
Yeah, that's good. You got a short memory.
Yeah. I got a long memory for things that I need to have a long memory for.
So, you know, Lonesome Dove is somewhat of a mix between a comedy and a drama and Western. Do you have a favorite on what you like to do? Do you like to do dramas? Do you like to do comedies more?
I like to mix it up.
Yeah.
And usually if I have a serious part, I look for something funny in it. And if I have a funny part, I look for something that I can maybe edge off toward a little serious, you know.
I see.
I like to mix it up.
That's interesting. Where does that come from?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
It's in this business, there's a lot of guys, and I'm sure you've noticed this, who play doctors or who play lawyers or who play the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
And
you get typecast,
I never wanted
right?
to do that. I always there's one time in my career that if there was a character came in with the first name of sheriff, I'd turn it down. I wouldn't even talk about going there because I'd been playing too many sheriffs and I didn't want to be typed in that.
Right.
You typecast it, you know, either they'll typecast you or you'll typecast yourself. And I tried to typecast myself in a way that's as broad as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
And still remain recognizable.
It's a very good point. You know, I think when you say typecast, I think of Cousin Eddie from Christmas, Christmas Vacation, Vegas Vacation. He did such a good job at that role that it really affected his
Randy
career.
Quaid, yeah.
Yeah. But you know, I think what intrigues me. Go ahead.
You ought to watch sometime young LBJ when Randy Quaid played Lyndon Johnson. He was awful good in that, and that give you a whole other perspective of him.
Yeah, I just wrote it down. I'll check it out for sure. I'll check it out. So what intrigues me about you, Barry, is guy from West Texas, cowboy, went on to the big stage as an actor in New York and LA, but you seem very humble. You seem very like you're a very intelligent guy, but you don't try to portray that character. You know what I mean? Because you seem to just portray a very simple personality, but I know that's much deeper than that. I can tell just from talking with you. What I'm so curious to know from people like yourself, what is it that makes you who Barry Corbin is? You know, why have you been able to do what you do? It's not just as simple as yeah, I went and read for this part and I got it, or I went and did this. You put in the time, you put in the years. What does your
Yeah.
process look like when you're getting ready for a movie? Or
Well,
you're
I
getting ready
think
for a scene even.
well, I got to say one thing. I think there was a movie that Patrick Wayne was in. It was called Rustler's Rhapsody.
Okay.
And he did one move. He did one move that was that looked like John Wayne. And I said, "Do you do that? Did you do that on purpose?" And he said, "Oh God." He said, "We all play our fathers, but when I do it, everybody knows it." So he was, and I think that's true. We all play our fathers. I mean, a lot of my stuff, it comes from my father and my grandfather. A lot of the things that I play.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's one other thing that I got to tell you. I asked Patrick one time if John Wayne ever gave him any advice on acting. He said, "Always pause in the middle of a sentence. Never pause at the end of a sentence, because then they can't get the scissors in." So that was his advice to his son.
That's good stuff. So speaking of advice, if you could go back and give Barry Corbin's 20-year-old self advice, what would that be? Knowing what you know now,
Just relax.
going through everything you've been through and having the knowledge you have now, what would that be?
Just relax and go with the flow. Don't get bent out of shape, because everything's going to work out all right.
It's so simple.
That's what
right?
I'd tell myself. Huh?
It's so simple, right? In hindsight,
Yeah.
being able to look back.
It's real simple. When you're going through it, when you're taking all your books over to the used bookstore so you can go to McDonald's to buy a hamburger, then you don't know how you're going to pay your rent at the end of the month, then it becomes real personal.
Yeah.
But if you have enough money to pay the rent and to have regular meals and maybe have a beer once in a while, then you're in good shape. If you have too much, you're worried about somebody stealing it from you. If you don't have enough, you can't survive. So
Yes,
you
sir.
want to hit right in the middle somewhere.
Was there times in New York or California when you were wondering where that next meal may come from as a before?
You bet. A lot, yeah, a lot of times. But those are good times, because they make you more determined and stronger. You've got to have bad times in order to appreciate the good ones.
It's very sage advice. That's good stuff. What I told you I'd keep it to an hour, Barry, so I'm gonna try to stick to my word. I want to respect your time. I've got two last questions for you. There's a question that I ask everybody that comes on the show. The name of the show is The Converse Cowboy. What is your definition of a cowboy?
Well, number one, it's a man who works with nature, a natural person. You know, you can't work with livestock or with any kind of agricultural situation and not appreciate nature, outdoors, what that means. And you learn that the world is a lot bigger than you are. You learn that you're going to have wrecks, but you get up and keep working, keep going. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to make it. If you can't ride through a storm and then get back up and ride through it again, then you might as well go get you a job in town.
That's a great answer.
That's about it. But also there's a whole lot more than that. There's a whole lot. There's the cowboy's sense of humor. I love to go out and help gather cattle on a ranch with a bunch of cowboys I don't know. Because at first they're very quiet. They don't say anything. They're watching you, see if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if a calf runs off, starts trying to get away, and you run out and head it without somebody telling you, pretty soon they're the most talkative people in the world, and they've got the best sense of humor in the world.
A lot of unwritten rules, right?
If you put them on the microphone and record what they say without them knowing it, they'd be Will Rogers and Bob Hope put together, you know.
Yeah.
But if you put a microphone in front of them and they know it's there, they all of a sudden they get tongue-tied.
Yeah. I
know
exactly
how that is.
Yeah, I do. I'm thinking about 3 or 4 different guys right now, as you said that. Speaking of cowboy sense of humor, since you brought it up, I've got to ask you, you've been around for a long time. And what I mean is you've been around the cowboy world for a long time. I'm always curious to know what is the best one-liner that you've ever heard, Barry?
Well, let's see now. This is not a one-liner, but it's a little story that you might have heard. This ranch woman was trying to win a contest, and she was going to make a little jingle to advertise carnation milk, and so she writes out, "Carnation milk, the best in the land, comes to you in a little red can." And so she hands it to a cowboy, says, "Take this, when you go into town, take this and mail it into the Carnation Milk Company, because I'm trying to win this jingle contest, and I think this is pretty good deal." The old cowboy takes it and he reads it and says, then he goes back in the bunkhouse and he gets him a pencil and says, "Carnation milk, best in the land, comes to you in a little red can. No tit to pull, no hay to pitch, just poke a hole in the son of a bitch." Sent that in. So that's an example.
That's a hell of an example. I love it. Man, I could probably sit here for another 2 or 3 hours with you, Barry. Like I said, I want to be respectful of your time. Where can folks find out more about you? I know you've got an evening with Barry Corbin. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, that's going to be coming up. What we're doing, we're putting together some film clips, and we'll have a little film clip celebration, and show a few of the things that I've done, and then I'll come out and give a little talk about a little bit about my career and about my ideas about what the world ought to be. And everybody's got their own opinion, but I've got mine, and I'll get out there and give some idea of what it is. Not all of it, but some.
Yeah, you bet.
And then we'll throw it open to question, and so we'll have a question and answer session for most of the thing. We'll have a conversation. I like a conversation with people.
I can tell that, and I love it. You're a very good conversationalist. Where's that going to be at, Barry?
Well, we're going to be doing it as soon as we can do it. We're going to be doing it over at the high school here in Fort Worth that teaches art, teaches filmmaking, teaches radio people, teaches cooks. I mean, they teach creative people. It's great. Creative high school. They're putting together the film clips for me, and we're going to do a program over there. And then we're going to try to book it around throughout where anybody wants to see it. We got several people expressed an interest so far, so
Yes, sir.
we'll see where we go with it.
That's great.
We haven't even started it yet, so we'll see.
That's great. I'm assuming as soon as COVID-19 ends, y'all start that up,
as soon
right?
as this ends, and then I've got like 4 or 5 movie projects I've got to get done, and then we'll dive right into the evening with me.
So you're still doing your thing, though. You're still acting. You're still working. You're still doing what you love to do.
Oh yeah. I'll be doing that forever. I'm going to be the oldest. I'm going to be the oldest Oscar winner there is.
That's great. That's great. Well, Barry, look, man, I appreciate it. This has been a pleasure to sit down with you and chat with you. And I know we just skimmed the surface on everything that you've done so far in your career. But just from this very short conversation, I can tell you're a very genuine guy, very authentic. You love what you do. And I think that's half the battle. Love what you do. And if you can get paid to do it, then you win. And
you bet you. Yeah. You gotta, you've got to be grateful if you're doing something and getting paid for it that you'd be doing anyway. So it's good. Let's close it out with a little Shakespeare.
I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to bring it up. So yes, let's hear it.
All the world's a stage. All the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and each man in his time plays many parts. His acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in his nurse's arms. Then the schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail, unwillingly to school. Then the lover, sighing like a furnace, with a woeful ballad writ to his mistress' eyebrow. Then the soldier, full of strange oaths, bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden, quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. Then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon line, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The next stage shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose, pouch on side, his youthful hose, well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again toward childish treble. Pipes and whistles in its sound. Next stage, all that ends this strange, eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans taste, sans eyes, sans everything.